Please understand that this decision was not made lightly. The Saco School Department and all of its staff are beyond exceptional, and I will continue to be a proud parent and supporter of our educational system. You are faced with growing population of children with unique and challenging needs, and as a result, a staff that needs to be better supported as well. These needs take resources, and I hope the community will continue to invest in them. I have such admiration for my fellow board members and City Council. The work is not easy. Their commitment to making the City of Saco a thriving place to live in is applauded. I'm proud to be a part of it, or was a part of it. Thank you and best of luck. Emily Walters, One Trailside Circle. And I just want to say we're going to really miss Emily, as she was a valuable member of this board that I have worked with since I've been here. So,
thank you for that. Excuse me. I will once again read the unexpired term fulfillment vacancies procedure under the board policies. If more than 1 year of the office holder's term remains, the city clerk shall schedule and conduct a special election for residents of the affected ward to select a new school board member. So, as many of you know, Ward 1 presented a resignation in early June. The process for filling that has already started and will be in the June election. I will check with the city clerk to see if we can do the same thing with this open school board seat, and hope to have an answer for you next week. Any further correspondence? Any questions? School board member Tardif.
Question whether or not we have to vote on the resignation.
you did on the last one.
I'm sorry?
There was a vote on the Ward 1 resignation.
One, I'm talking about
Yep.
the new one.
Yeah.
Would you like to see that on the next agenda?
Well, it should be. I mean, we have to approve nobody's going to say no, but I mean, we should do it
Fair enough.
as a formality.
Can we put that on the next agenda?
Sure.
School Board Member Marsden.
The procedure that we need to follow is, one, we need to have a motion to accept this resignation.
Stan, can you get into the...
Okay. Secondly, I'm sorry. Secondly, the school board needs to get together with the city clerk to arrange for the election of this now empty seat. And it is the school board that arranges for the replacement. And in this case, has to be done by election because her term was more than 2 years left.
Thank you. So I just want to, once again, clarify the process to make sure that everybody knows what that process is. In the board policies, an unexpired term fulfillment vacancies procedure. If a vacancy in the office of school board member arises prior to the normal expiration of term by virtue of resignation, death, forfeiture of office, as described in section 2.06B of the Saco City Charter, change of residence from ward from which elected, or if a member should miss 3 consecutive meetings without excuse, the vacancy in the office shall be filled as follows. 1, if less than 1 year of the office holder's term remains, the school board shall appoint a resident from the affected ward. 2, if more than 1 year of the office holder's term remains, the city clerk shall schedule and conduct a special election for residents of the affected ward to select a new school board member. That is the process. Any further correspondence? Seeing none, moving on to agenda item 6. A presentation from the Saco Middle School 7th grade Sebago Humanities presentation.
Mayor Doyle, Superintendent DePatsy, and school board members, thank you for having us. My name is Andrew Fursch. I am one of the teachers on the 7th grade Sebago team. A large part of the work that we're doing is related to our community, and part of that is our community groups, where students choose topics of interest and ways that they want to try to help improve their community, and they work towards coming up with solutions to that. We have 3 groups of students tonight who will be sharing projects that they've been working on. One proposing bike lanes, expansion of bike lanes in town, one proposing a second dog park in town, both of which we are looking for your support on. And the third one is a conservation project, which they'll tell you more about. After they share, they definitely have to go home because it's a school night, but we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy budget season to hear their presentation. So without further ado, I'll introduce the bike lane group.
Thank you very much.
I'm Allison Marines,
And I'm Riley Prejean.
and we are here to present bike lanes. We are on the Sebago 7 team at Saco Middle School. 63% of students on our team said that they would ride a bike to school if they had a safe bike lane to do so. We have been working on bike lanes on the teams in Saco since September. The first thing we did was research and interview. We interviewed the Saco Chief of Police, Mr. Clements, and we interviewed Mr. Fox from Saco Public Works.
Through email, we were able to interview 3 people that are experts. Eliza from the Boston Cyclists Union, Alex Epstein from People for Bikes, and Roger Geller from the Portland, Oregon Bureau of Transportation. And they said they liked our idea and would like to help us out. But the people we interviewed in person thought our project may be difficult, for reasons being cost, traffic, and weather. Usually it costs roughly $500,000 for 1 mile of a protected bike lane. For the streets we wanted to put bike lanes on, it would cost roughly $5 million. So we're thinking, how are we going to work around this?
Mr. Fox and Mr. Clements made a point that building a protected bike lane all the way down Jenkins and Buxton Road was far-fetched and quite unrealistic, although not out of our reach, and just to change our approach a little bit. We put thought into this and thought of other options that are less far-fetched. Our idea was to build a bike lane that aren't protected but separated. We aim to build bike lanes on sidewalks. We would do this by expanding the width of the sidewalk until it's wide enough for a decently sized bike lane. We feel this would be cost-effective and safe. If the city of Saco built a protected bike lane on a road, it would cost about $500,000 per mile, which is too much money for us to raise in the amount of time given. However, if we expanded the sidewalks on Buxton Road by 2 feet, we would have a 7-foot sidewalk. The average protected bike lane is a 5 feet wide sidewalk, and our sidewalks are 5 feet wide. So if Saco decided to expand the sidewalk on Buxton Road by 2 feet, it would only cost $194,304 per mile. We want to build this expanded sidewalk from Saco Middle School to Knott Street, where you turn onto the Eastern Trail into TA. That would be exactly 2 miles. The total cost of paving an expanded sidewalk, according to walkbikeandsee.org, would be only $388,608.
The other road we want to put bike lanes on is Jenkins Road. Jenkins Road is 2.6 miles long, so we did the math, and the cost for Jenkins would approximately be $505,190. We think the expanded sidewalks would be safer because instead of being close to vehicles, you're next to other bikers, walkers, and joggers. If we had the expanded sidewalks, bikers can feel safe while getting where they need to be, whether that be school or a job.
So these are our reasons why bike lanes in Saco would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm Mackenzie Ames.
And I'm Calvin Richard.
The students on Sebago 7 and I would like to make another dog park in Saco. We need your approval to do this, but first let us explain why we think it's a good idea.
We have 2 potential locations for this park, the first being Diamond Park. Diamond Park is located at the end of Irving Street and is a small park with a playground located on it. This playground could become a problem because some dogs can be aggressive and we would not want any children to be harmed. It's not far from a large neighborhood where lots of people live in condos, meaning it could get a lot of attention.
Our second and more likely choice would be the corner of Market Street. Ryan Summer, the head of Saco Parks and Rec, was the person who recommended it. It used to be a dump, but was cleaned out and now is a small area of clear land. This park is located in a neighborhood with lots of rental houses. This means that the park would be used often, making it a more better choice.
One dog park that we have taken inspiration from is the Valley Street Dog Park. This park is a shelter for dogs and humans on cold days and land for dogs to run free. One hope we would have for our dog park is that we would have access to used tennis balls from a tennis court and use them for our park. We'd also have shade from trees and shelters, and possibly we can install dog food / treat dispensers like the ones found at petting zoos.
The cost of building this park is obviously an important factor. We called Alex Marshall, who works for Portland City offices, and he wasn't able to give us an exact cost, but gave us some things that would need to be paid for. The factors he mentioned were fencing, and non-dust, stone dust, and maintenance, where the cost can vary depending on who we are paying. Ryan Summer met with us and told us that the price of fencing was around $16,000, and a gate would cost around $1,000 to $4,000. The treat dispensers would cost around $100 to $300. We would also like to install a plaque with the names of all the people who helped make this dog park a possibility with their names on it, which would cost around $100.
We have done all this research, and we truly believe it is a good cause. We believe that every dog should be able to exercise. Not only do dogs get to interact, but the people who own them can also connect there. This is why we believe having a dog park is a good idea.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for that presentation.
Hello everyone, I'm Abby and this is Gabby, Zach, and Gianna. We're going to be talking to you about how we have been conserving and how you can help us conserve.
So we're Sebago 7 and so we're part of Saco Middle School. So we're trying to conserve an 8-acre piece of land in Saco, and it would roughly cost around $70,000.
But why do we want to buy this land? One reason buying this land will help is that it will expand a wildlife corridor that goes from Saco to Scarborough and someday into Gorham. This wildlife corridor would provide an area for animals to stay away from human activities. This land will also provide a place for humans to enjoy nature and simply be.
So what have we already done? Well, we've done a lot of things to raise money. First, we had a showcase night. After that, we started writing hundreds of letters to people. Lots of our team members have also written grants. We've met with various people who care about this project and have been interviewed with some newspapers. And now we're meeting with you.
What do we want you to do? Well, as a team, we want to have you to go out and advertise and spread the word of what we're trying to do to accomplish. It's not really easy being a group of 7th graders trying to conserve an 8-acre piece of land. It's a lot of work, and it's really good for us because it gives us an experience, and we can share it with other people as well. So making the money and being able to spread all of this would be really helpful because we want to impact a community and do a lot, and that can drive others to doing the same thing.
So you may know that we need help, but how exactly can you help? One way you can help is by publicly supporting Sebago 7 and our conservation. This could be done by dropping our conservation with discussions with friends or family members, or you could come to our showcase nights where we talk about it a lot. You can also personally make donations by check or online at the Saco Valley Land Trust, which is very convenient and easy. Lastly, you could also help us by coming to our events, as I said before, but it also helps us when you really do talk about it. Getting support outside of just our small connections in the school is extremely helpful. In conclusion, Sebago 7 really needs your help to make our dreams of conservation come true. It's really easy to help us, but it makes a massive difference in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to say that I am one of many teachers who's incredibly proud of this group, and I think the town should be grateful to have young people who are this invested in their community. yeah, they're just a wonderful group of people. So, and I think we actually have a donation.
What I was going to say is, I know you are going to the city council, correct? Right? So that was a great place to go because they hold all the money. We'll be talking about budget later, and the mayor's here. Also, if you guys would like to donate to this great cause, you can, and I can help you with the website, or we'll take money order or cash. Or can you take cash? Just kidding. Great. So we kind of challenge you to make an investment if you can.
Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 7, the public comment section. I don't have the public comment sheet. Is there anyone signed up? Is there anyone who would like to speak for public comment? Moving on to agenda item 9, the budget timeline, which was included in your packet. Superintendent
Yep,
DePatsy.
so we updated the budget timeline, and this is already on the website. We added an extra workshop based on what Stan was talking about last time, that we need more time, so we added another Wednesday. I did talk to Glennis at the city. We are going to be a little bit late. However, she is going to put our preliminary budget that we already have in their book. Once you are all finished after these 3 Wednesdays, we will put the updated version. We will give that to them on the Monday, March 23rd, or actually, we'll give it to them beforehand, but we will also give another hard copy there.
Thank you. Monday, the 23rd, is the joint meeting between the school board and the city council.
And is that joint as we're sitting together, or is that?
That is joint, as we
Great.
will be together to
Just had
discuss
several
the-
board members ask me about
Yeah.
that, so.
Are there any questions? Questions? Okay, moving on to agenda item 10, adjourn the school board meeting and enter the workshop. Is there a motion? School board member Tardif. You move we adjourn the school board meeting and enter the workshop? Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
School board member Johnston. Any discussion? School board member Leary?
Yes.
School board member Scheinman?
Yes.
School board member Tardif? School board member Marsden? School board member Johnston? Motion passes 5-0. We're going to take a brief 5-minute recess while we reset the tables down here for the budget workshop. Just going to be here, budget workshop. Down on me. We're not going downstairs. Ugh. My significant other's a nurse, and I'm just always amazed. Yeah. After? When I was a
So good, Ken. Yeah. Like an hour. We'll deduct an hour. But, yeah, like this after. Oh. Thank you. I thought it slid out.
Microphones are handy to people, yeah.
Yeah. Gotta be careful.
Thank you, Tom.
At this day and age, you just gotta.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I need this table this big.
I know.
We should invite some of the public up here.
No, you should.
We really should. People should just come
I
out.
think you should invite him.
I think we should. Just saying.
I think that would be funny. I think that would be funny. Yeah, it's kind of like we're all spread out. Stan, I got you your own microphone. That's your microphone.
So I have to move that to there.
I think we might have used too many tables.
He got that mic.
Yeah.
I think that is the teacher's. I think that's Andrew's.
Got it?
That's what I said.
Can we move a little closer together?
Hey, you can sit right there.
Yeah,
Sit right over there.
yeah, I think I should.
All right. Okay, let's begin the budget workshop conversation. Superintendent DePatsy, do you want to present any of these new documents that we received?
Yep. Okay, so as I was instructed by last week to go back to our leadership team to talk about reductions in the budget, I got a range from $400,000 to $2 million. So we, the leadership team met today, and we came up with a total, and this could shift and change because there's still things I need to research, came up to about $1,050,000. That's kind of where we are. And what my goal is right now, I did go over it with a few of you today that came in the office. I'm going to go by department and then I'd like to get through that and then answer any questions around that. I'm going to start with tech, but Chris is upstairs. If you have a question for any of the departments, oh, there he is. Sorry, Chris. I did see you. I saw you left. And then what we'll do is, if you have a question for Chris, he'll be happy to come up and explain some of the things that we did. We came to consensus on this, I would say. They're all here. I think that some of these, in these position reductions, there is no one losing their job at this point. On a side, I did meet with our MEA reps today, and I did review most of these with them, and they agreed, they had the same type of reductions because I wanted the input from the teachers. They had the same ones that we were talking about. They did add a couple more, but I won't say that until we get talking in discussion. So, I'm going to start off with technology. Chris and his team reduced his tech budget to $168,000. As you can see, what that entitles is mostly some software applications, the SMS phone system. We're putting that off for another year. However, and Chris will tell you, and I'm probably not going to say it as sternly as he said, that this could be a safety issue because if the phones go, we have no way to communicate. However, it's not a teaching position. E-rate projects that are related to the phone system, a Remind software that helps communicate with our parents, E-rate projects that are another $55,000, and a training line of $10,000 that we train other staff with, and he's reduced it down just for his tech staff. So basically, that came out to about $168,000. There's more parts of this later on, but they come under different sections. Chris is back there. Do you have any questions for him or me or anyone else? Some of this stuff you won't understand really because it's kind of more apps and stuff, but.
School Board Member Marsden?
Go on first. One of my traditional questions that I ask when we're doing things like this is I'd like to know what the consequences are of the actions that we are taking or contemplating taking. So to technology, my question particularly applies to the phone system. My understanding, it will impact on one of the programs that we have that affects, am I speaking into the mic?
Keep going.
Okay.
I'm just having Chris come to the table.
Does impact and would have an impact on the students' safety. And my question is that correct? And if so, how much of an impact is that?
As I mentioned last year when we went over this, that phone system's been in place for several years now, all the way from the actual physical phones to the switches that do a lot of the management of that system. They're due for replacement. If you speak to the principal or assistant principal at that school, they've had ongoing issues at various points during the year. One thing to note, our intercom system is also tied to the phone system. So, for example, they've had some problems in the gym with the intercom system. When their announcements are made, there's been times where those don't go through. So you can imagine, I always look at it worst case scenario. You have to look at it that way. Communication's a big deal in the schools. If they announce something and the kids and the staff don't hear it, that can be a problem, depending on what it is. Just as simple as if somebody needed medical attention in the school, if a phone didn't work for whatever reason, and somebody doesn't have their cell phone available, they might not be able to dial out to get, emergency services or what have you. Those are the type of things we're talking about. Certainly, the stuff is, for the most part, working now, but as you know, with technology and anything that has mechanical parts or anything technology related, the longer out you go, you start dumping money into it with repair costs and downtime. Some things I'm okay with having downtime, but when you're talking about safety of kids and staff, that's not one of them I really want to mess with. And I've told Dom, that, I'm bringing it to your attention, it's your decision certainly, but at some point we need to do it. But given the situation we're in right now, that's one of the things we've agreed on.
So does this have an impact anyplace outside what you've been talking about? Some other area, or is it pretty well isolated to itself?
It's isolated to SMS. Our phone systems are segmented out across the district. They're not all tied together because we're on different systems. So Young has a whole entire different system than SMS, and then SMS has a different system than some of our elementary schools like C.K. Burns or Fairfield School. So it's isolated to SMS, but again, it's what they rely on for communication outside the school.
So is this something you would be planning, if we don't do it this year, we do it next year?
It's going to be on the list until we get it done. And, I mentioned part of it, like the switches and the firewall on the backside of it. A lot of that I can put in for E-rate funding, which I have in this budget. Some of that money we get back, not this year, but the following year. We're trying to lower the cost of the total replacement, and one way to do it is through E-rate. Again, if we don't do the phone system, some of that switches and firewall and stuff can get pushed back another year, but those of you that are on the infrastructure committee, I presented my plan over 10 years for our devices and our network infrastructure, and my goal is to keep us as flat as can be. This is the year to do it, because next year we have other things that are going to come on the table, and if we don't do it this year, you're going to see a spike next year. And again, we address that next year, but that's the ripple effect that we're going to see here if we don't do it.
Very good, thank you.
And Stan, that's in the infrastructure committee. Remember, we had that 5-year plan that we just did.
Yeah.
School Board Member Johnston.
So Chris, to kind of follow up on what you just said, the E-rate projects are connected, at least this one right here is connected to the phone system, correct?
Correct.
So if we don't do one, we don't do the other? Is that the way that works or not?
So as far as E-rate goes, and I kind of lumped on this list, there's $58,000 for the phone system. That's a quote based on getting feedback from a couple of companies. So you got $58,000 just for the phone system. If we're going to do the phone system, I have to do the E-rate stuff because the switches we have in place currently will not support a new phone system. So if we, let's say, elected to cut the E-rate piece of it, which is the $34,000 number, if we cut that, I wouldn't be able to do the phones. So the $34,000 on your sheet, that is the E-rate projects that are just at that school. Later on down your list, you have another number which is $55,000, which is E-rate projects for Young, Fairfield, and C.K. Burns School, and like central office and, those smaller offices. So I tried to carve out the SMS one just because, again, if we don't do the phones, it's not necessarily tied into it.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? I think we can move on to Human Resources.
Yep. So human resources. So one of the things that you don't see a number is early retirement option for hiring next year. So I also discussed this with the teachers union, and when we did an analysis, Jen Bradford did an analysis of how many teachers in our district are 60, 62, 65. We have 20 teachers. One thing that I did have a very lengthy conversation with our headmaster, Mr. Bernard, at TA. They did this a couple years ago. We did this at RSU in 2013, where 9 staff took advantage of this. And so I don't have any figures here. I'm bringing it up to you to see if there's something that you want me to research, come back with proposals. You could do different types of things. I know Headmaster Bernard did a healthcare piece incentive with a cash out for any people that want to retire. So what that did was, some teachers that are 62, I want to work 3 more years because they don't want to pay for the 55% for their insurance. So we pay for that for 3 years, we pay them a cash. So that's something that some people are doing. And I know Stan wants to talk about it. I know at the end, Stan wants to kind of talk about it, residual, but that is something that the MEA, and that is something we could do. I don't have a price figure on that. It would be upfront cost in this budget, but, and I'll let Stan talk about the residual effects of that. But that is something that I think at the end, if you want me to look at, I can come back with proposals.
School Board Member Marsden.
Yes, thank you. One of the reasons that I wanted to talk on this particular subject is that we don't want to look at something like this with a one-year impact, because this has a long-range impact. And so if you're saving some money by what you're doing now, that's money that will be saved each year, every year as you go along, and or needs to be addressed each year as you're going along. So an item like this is something that should be looked at every year to see what we can do to carry savings forward. And we don't do enough of that. We look at this year, not looking at what the consequences or the gains are as a result of what action you've taken at this point. So Dom, when you're looking at this and taking the study, are you going to be able to project some about, what next year's gain would be, not just this year's or the budget we're working on now, but the one to follow?
We could do a projection like that. Just for the record, we only have 2 teachers right now that are going into, that have proposed retirement. Again, they have till April 1st to tell us they are going to retire. So this is the time that we would probably need to do this if you want to look at it. But yes, we can do a 5-year plan out. What I need to do is, it's hard because I don't have the 2013 books, because we're not part of the RSU anymore. So somehow I've got to figure out how much we actually saved on those 9 teachers. So it might be an estimate. So I couldn't do that today. It was very last minute. So.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I think we can move on to Finance Department.
The other 2 here, just to quickly go over, is a sub reduction for professional days. I know we have a lot of sub issues. We have done a great job of hiring subs, and it seemed to come down a little bit, but we still pull from our interventionists, our coaches, and other teachers. We are proposing to cut $10,000 of the sub line and keep staff in district that are not going out of district. So that was something that we talked about today. ProTrax is another thing that we use. It's an online thing that we use to get all of our trainings done. We would have to look at a different way or another cost-effective way to get that done. So we're again, trying to streamline efficiencies here. It's not a lot in here, but again, if we do the retirement, that could be another piece, which is not part of that $1 million.
Any questions? School Board Member Leary.
So explain to me how you're going to have sub-reduction. Like, is it really going to work that way? That you just, if they're still doing professional development, they're still not in the classroom, whether they're in district or out of district. So how do you make that savings?
So what we talked about today, and if anybody wants to clarify, we talked really more of out of district. So when staff go out of district for trainings, we're going to limit that starting July 1st. So no one will be going out, so we start in August, no one's going out of the district with a sub. So we calculated it as about a $10,000 savings. There will be subs, because obviously we have contracts for personal days, sick days, and things like that. But this is for just PD.
So how many days of substitution is that, $10,000?
I think, what was the number, 252 that Jen came up with? I don't have that off the top. I'm just pulling that. There's a lot of stuff thrown around today, but we had about 252 days for professional development in the district. But that included assessment days for some of our teachers and things like that. and you got to figure it times $80, $90, $100 a sub, right? Okay. So that's what we came up with. Again, looking for efficiencies and streamlining, which you asked me to do.
School Board Member Johnston.
So just to clarify, again, Dom, the 252 days is 252 days of sub-hiring or whatever?
Sub-hiring for...
Just for that?
Just for professional development. That does not include sick days.
Right.
Personal days, voucher days. And am I missing one? Personal days, sick days,
Bereavement?
bereavement
Or anything.
days, anything in the contract, so.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
If you want more information on that, I can break that out too. Ready for finance?
I think we're ready.
All right, finance. You probably, I don't like doing this, but we play with health insurance cost. We put it in at 8%. Last year came in at 0. We brought it down to 5%. Again, it's a suggestion, just like the TA formula. You can play with that up and down. It's $100,000. The next one, we cross that out, please. Current one, current lease space in the budget. That is for the possible next year for the Toddle Inn. That's about $41,000 that we would get back in lease. This came from Jason. This is that we could possibly get back. We also took off the contingency of $150,000, and then we also looked at the TA tuition and Matt. We played around with that. We reduced it, and I know some of you might not like this, but we reduced it down to 27 instead of 45 based on our formula that we created, and made the reduction from 3% to 2%. So that came up from finance, and again, this is the finance area of $248,000. Steve, sorry.
Yeah. Everybody has to understand there's a risk in that. If you take out the contingency, it's $150,000. If what happened years ago when we had 90 more students show up at the TA, we get clobbered on this one. And what we had tried to do was be conservative in our thinking to protect ourselves. And on the health insurance, if it jumps, we also get hurt. So it's just it's a consideration in this. You're playing some risks, but it does, it's a significant total budget-wise.
Over the past 3 years, what's the trend been of the health insurance? So last year it was 0. Previous year, what was it?
I think it was 4.
And then the previous year before that?
I think it was close to 8. And then it went down. I mean, we can get that for you. I mean, if that's something you guys want to do and average out, like the increases that we've had. I mean, people ask, what's the average increase over 5 years for the total budget? Well, we can get that too. So I can put that down to have for information. Again, you don't have to make decisions tonight.
Yeah.
This is good.
I was just curious what the trend was.
It's all over the place. It depends on.
I'm sure it depends on utilization and so forth, and I get that.
So.
Any questions under the finance section? School Board Member Marsden, question?
Well,
comment?
Question to Mike, because this is mostly your area that we're looking at.
We're there next. Hold on, Stan.
Yeah.
The next one is Mike's. Yep.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to that.
All right, we just started it.
If I may.
So we're okay with finance, no questions on finance?
What's that?
No questions on finance department?
On finance, not yet.
Okay.
No, I should say.
Moving on to OPM.
No, not on that. I thought you would move that.
Not yet, we're getting
Sorry.
there.
I apologize.
So in Mike's department, I'm calling it OPM. Again, we are meeting with the positive thing. We are working closely with the mayor and 2 members of city council, or the larger, I call it the super infrastructure committee, and we have our group and their group there, and we're talking about efficiencies that we could look at, but we're not quite there with everything. However, so we looked at Mike's department, and we looked at reducing the carpet. We were going to replace carpet at Young and Fairfield for $30,000. H-wing, there was a roof place that's $15,000. Scale back on district control work is $9,000. We put 0 in. I know we are trying to get portables because we're really lacking space. That's not in the budget. That is a RAD. Again, something that infrastructure committee that we're looking at. However, we are still going forward with the 2 committee meetings about the space until we figure out what's going on with that. But that's not in there, so we just put a 0. We cut 1 bus for $20,000, fleet fuel, it's a double F, $25,000, fleet repair is $30,000. Comes to $129,000 from Mike's department. He's here. Do you want Mike to come up to talk?
School Board Member Marsden, would you like Mr. Garrity to come up?
I'll address these to Mike. Maintenance is always the easy place to cut, and always the most difficult to recover from the cut, because, you know, something happens along the way, gets more expensive, and the consequences in many cases cause other things to have to be repaired. So, looking at these items here that are on this list, are there any that fall into the category to start off with that have overlapping consequences that could cause this to become more expensive if we were to do it next year?
I believe not more expensive, it probably just puts more pressure on the district to come up with the money that they didn't plan for, like car.
You have it on, Mike?
Push the button. Yep, there you go.
Oh, okay. The carpet's 20 years old, so if we have someone in the room that has some kind of medical condition that the doctor says, hey, you know, indoor air quality in the room needs to be improved, a lot of times carpet is one of the things we look at as helping that situation out. So if that happens during the year, I mean, rather than, you know, having to deal with indoor air quality problems and have extra testing and stuff, it's usually less expensive to just go ahead and replace the carpet. So we would end up doing that anyways. And all of the carpet we're looking at replacing is all over 20 years old.
When you're working on these, we're talking about a new school here within some time that most of us in this room will see, or at least I hope that's true, yours truly included. But, so when you're looking at these, do you take into account that there is an endpoint for these things because of the new school?
Yes, we do. I mean, we prioritize everything based on, you know, the future and what we think will happen. I mean, I'm looking at probably 5 to 7 years out for a new school, best case scenario. So I'm looking at carpet and equipment that's past its useful life now. So the only thing we're pretty much putting in the budget now is stuff that's critical now.
Do you coordinate anything with the city departments that may overlap into some of these areas? Or are there any overlaps at all?
I don't know that any of this equipment overlaps with the city. I mean, if a project comes up and we can use city resources, then I definitely talk to whoever department it is that would be able to help us.
Okay, thank you.
School Board Member Leary.
Mike, how do you think, I'm confused on why you think you can cut the fuel and the repair if we're cutting out a brand-new bus, so now we have an older bus. Like, where is that savings coming from? Have we looked into, like we've talked about with the city, can you get better pricing if we combine the fuels together, or do you already do that?
We already do combine the fuels. I mean, we kind of work together when we contract and bid all that stuff out. We have been pretty good about replacing our bus fleet over the last few years, and we've just, you know, looking at the historic kind of data we have for fuel, that's where we feel comfortable with where we are with fuel. And the prices for fuel have come down from what we used to budget for fuel a little bit, so that makes a big difference.
Right, but we've got a year in front of us, and who knows where that's going.
Yep, I think we're already signed up for the next year for fuel oil, so we're kind of in a good position there. And then the buses, we added 6 new buses to the fleet last year, so that helps our maintenance quite a bit. So that's why we're able to do that. That's just based on historic and what we did last year.
Didn't want to get caught with our pants down, and then we have major issues, and then we're 25,000 over what we.
Yep, don't foresee that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? School Board Member Johnston.
So just for clarification, Mike, if we cut one bus, how many buses are we still looking to lease purchase?
The state approved us for one bus, so we're going to go along with that one. That way we still are in the state program and we still get reimbursed for it in the future, so, yep. I mean, our program used to call for us to hopefully replace 2 buses each year, so that keeps us, up to date with buses, and they don't get over their mileage or years in use. And so we cut one, so we keep one.
Any further questions?
I just want to talk a little bit about the Do School. So I think Justin did a great job with City Council explaining where we are with the school, so I don't have to repeat that. I think most of you heard that. I was in a meeting with Pender, which is our commissioner, and I'm not the only one in the room pressuring the DOE around new schools. The average age of schools is 60 years old or older. So there is a bill, or there is money, like Justin said, that they could be pulling in, asking for an extra $25 million, and then pulling other money over from another area. So that is in the legislature. That could happen. I'm not sure if it will, but I just want to make sure that we keep updated on that. Plus, the governor has more money coming in. I don't know where that's we could get more subsidy, but we won't know that for a while. So again, when we do our budget, there's so many unknowns about a lot of different things. So we are trying to prepare a budget, and I think the public sometimes doesn't understand that. So we don't know how the numbers are going to come back in on the tax levy.
Thank you. Any further questions regarding OPM? Moving on to pre-K.
So with pre-K, it's combined with curriculum, and what we have done is we moved the curriculum director's salary into the pre-K line, and we did shore up a few lines in there based on, because last year was a startup cost, so we kind of reduced that back. So that came out to $31,000. I kind of want to again talk about how we get pre-K money, because there is a lot of wrong information out in the Facebook land. So it does come through our 279, but it's a direct lineage. It goes right into basically our subsidy line. It's a 1-for-1. So we are going to get a SurveyMonkey soon, and I know that Julie is going to have our pre-K registrations in March. So we will have a number of how many kids are going to come into the system. In about May, they'll ask how many kids are going to be registered. I would say last year we put in 112, I think it was, 112. And we got subsidy for that amount. If it's 120, we'll get subsidy for that. On October 1st, they automatically look at our October pre-K numbers, and we were 3 short, even though now we're back at 112. We lost $35,000 or $40,000 instantly like that. So once they do the look at our child count numbers, that money comes out. None of the other areas in the 279 do that. So it filters down through like a formula. So pre-K is very, very different. So I just want to make sure people know what it is. It's immediate, and it's good and bad. It'll take away if you don't have the numbers. Is that clear? Because I know I talked to a few of you today, and that was still a little muddy.
Are there any questions surrounding the pre-K program or the ED 279 funds that come in from the school board members? School board member Leary.
What are the in-house reductions?
That's the in-house reduction, is moving the salary out of the regular curriculum budget over there. And that's an estimate right now. So we put that back over there. So we're still, curriculum's pretty tight. I did get input from the MEA on some things under curriculum to reduce, but I haven't put this in there. So a lot of this is a moving target.
Thank you. Anything further? Moving on to
the schools.
Fairfield School.
Yeah. So Fairfield, Young, C.K. Burns, and middle school are pretty much all the same. If you look at it, some of the language is a little different. We'll start with Fairfield first. What we decided this morning is to reduce the summer interventions. Part of that is Kindergarten Jump Start. Seeds of Learning, and so forth. And the reason why we really are going to be doing that is when I first came, we brought in the K Jumpstart, which was a great idea. I think now with our preschool, if you look at the number of kids, again, this is not the kids we don't know or don't get, but we know exactly where our kids are, all 112 of them, and where they're going to be going in. We have great assessment data. We have great teachers. So those kids are going to be coming in, which will reduce the need for K-Jump. I'm saying we might need a little one for some kids, but I think we could possibly do that in the school year. So that's the reason why you'll see that 24 there under Young and under Fairfield. So those are the reasons why we're doing that. So I think you talked about that before, Lynn, about, why would we need that? Now I think we're there. And thank you guys for pushing forward with the pre-K, even with all the disturbances of it. It is a great program. As Julie said today, she drank the Kool-Aid. So it is an amazing, amazing program, and the great teachers. Again, if you haven't been into our pre-K, go visit. It is very cool. I know you have a grandchild there, so.
School Board Member Marsden, did you have a question?
Not just here, but elsewhere, heard how much benefit, educational benefit there is to the two items here. We're talking about interventions and summer school reading. In both schools, we're talking about Fairfield and Young. So I'm looking out here. And what I'm trying to assess here in terms of the impact on the education, if the interventions, for example, are so important to addressing problems that grow over time because things are attended to today, rather than 2-3 years from now when things are out of control. So if we're cutting these, is this something that we need to gradually work our way into anyway? Or is it something that can be attended to through some other means that we haven't looked at up until now?
That's a great question. Yeah, we could reduce it to have a little bit of money in there. Like I said, there's some kids that would like to get that they're not in our preschool for the K-Jump or the Seeds of Learning and things like that. However, the kids that we really need are not the ones that we're getting, if you understand. So I know we talked about that today. A lot of the kids that are at risk, we can't get to school. We can't get them to the summer program.
Yeah. Okay.
That are not special ed. This is just regular ed kids that are at risk. So I think that's where the leadership team made that decision.
School Board Member Scheim.
Yeah, and I do recall you just said that one of the reasons for doing this is the fact we have the preschool, that it makes less intervention necessary, if I heard that right.
And we're also competing with rec, which is a big one, because parents work.
Yeah.
It's really hard to bring them over for a couple hours or a half a day when they have to work and they need, if you want to increase that, we can compete with rec, but then we would taking revenue from the city, which then we probably wouldn't be very happy about either. So that's kind of why we reduced it.
If I may, and then I'll pass the mic to Beth. Address my question to Maureen and to Peter. You're the ones that have to live with the consequences of this more so than anybody else. Do you have any other comments that you would like to make in connection with what's being discussed right now?
I would just piggyback on what Dom said, that attendance has been a major concern of ours, and that's why we were willing to put that onto the list. We are much more supportive of our interventions throughout the year when we have an active audience. Summer has been a struggle for us for the past couple of summers, so we've been trying to find other ways to capture those students that we aren't able to get throughout the summer.
Peter?
I would just say, piggyback again on what Don said, place some emphasis on what I see as really optimistic around what we can expect from the pre-K experience, kids coming in. And I think we'll evaluate that over time, and then we look at these intervention programs. I think kids have had 10 months of school that they haven't had before, and we're really excited about that as they maybe get there.
Okay, thank you. Beth?
School Board Member Johnston.
My question had to do in part with the number of kids that are served with that summer intervention program. I heard the number 24 mentioned. I'm not sure I got everything fully that I understand it. I'm just curious, what would you consider to be a good number of kids for that program, so that it would sort of justify and make sense to actually provide it? Do you have a sort of a figure that?
It's typically what we serve, but even to have those children come on a regular basis, we're still competing with vacation. So it's a 4-week program, but you often have kids who have to miss a week or miss 2 weeks because of their vacation. So to have them come for that full amount of time has been difficult.
Okay. And my next question actually has to do with the before school reading program, which is listed here as $5,000 in both schools. It's not a lot of money, but it seems like a valuable program, so I just thought I'd ask about that.
So again, without reducing a staff member, we decided to do the before and after reading programs that we do. So the reason it was money that we could reduce this year, hopefully put it back the following year. But if you have questions, they know more about who does it in the morning. So do you want to know more about that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize, but I'm not quite following what you just said, so whoever wants to fill me in is fine.
So why don't you guys explain it?
The before school reading program is a voluntary program for families that wish to access that. It's an intervention for kids that just not where we want them to be necessarily. So it's a boost. And the team that provides that service, we have members of our literacy teams, and we open the positions up to classroom teachers as well. So there are a combination of teachers and educational technicians. I think there are 4 at my school that provide that support to kids for a span of time. There are 3 sessions over the course of the school year.
Are there any other further questions? Superintendent?
Yeah, I think those are, the other part was at summer PLC time in both areas. And basically that was also discussed with the MEA today. They felt like no PD in the summer if that was the one that's not on our list. So I just wanted to give you their feedback on that. And then the other one are really just adjustments. We were supposed to move our social worker forward at Young School to full-time, as well as change the ed tech into a math coach. And we won't do that next year, just like with Chris and with what Mike talked about in his department. We'll wait and do that next year. Again, we put it off like the phone systems and things like that. And that came up with that total. Does that make sense?
Any questions? School Board Member Leary.
So I personally have a problem with us saying, we don't need it this year, but let's put it on the budget next year. Next year, we're going to be in the same position we're in right now. So if we can put it off, do we truly need it, is my question. And I know you're going to say yes, because I just know that's what the answer is. But my thought is, if you don't need it, if you can do what you need to do without it, why do we have to think about adding it next year?
Peter, do you want to talk about that? Why it would be beneficial for you?
Good question. I think I'll look at the social work position first. I think we absolutely have a need in today's society for kids and families, and with the level of support that we have right now is not adequate based on the number of kids and families we need. So that piece, I would love to see that full time, given the had for I'm not sure how many years, a math teacher. We don't
I
have.
don't have all that. Give me a copy of it someday, not today.
So we would look to bump that up.
I don't have it.
This year, I would advocate that we come back around next year and reconsider.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Find it. Thank you.
Any further questions? Superintendent,
Ready, moving on?
moving on.
On to CK Burns?
School Board Member Scheim.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions that were raised about. There are a couple of questions that were raised about the notion of that we would need to give direction to the superintendent to proceed on. And one of them had to do with early retirement. And I believe you need some direction from us to proceed on that?
Well, we're not quite done yet. I'm still going down
Oh, I'm
through.
sorry.
Yep,
I'm sorry.
I'd like to finish all the different areas and then kind of
okay.
wrap in what the reductions look like. And then you guys can tell me your next direction of where you want me to go,
Good.
which included that.
Yeah.
All right, so Burns School. We have an Ed Tech in-district adjustment and an after-school program. So what I'm going to explain that to you, it's kind of hitting a couple different areas. Again, Chris Stryker and his team decided to reduce the assistant technology director, eliminate the position, move that person and create a new position, a library, because we don't have a librarian at Burns. So now we would have a librarian at Burns and at SMS, keep an EdTech at each one, and also that librarian at Burns would but work with the K-2 schools. This is you'll see, I'm going to talk about that later on, but that is another way of looking at efficiencies, and Chris came to the plate for that. So that is why that EdTech adjustment would be there. However, that person would not lose a job. We would move them into one of the open special ed positions that we currently have.
Dom?
Yep.
If I just want to make sure I'm following you on this here. So this is a long-term thing. This isn't something we're going to see come back
No.
next year or the year after.
And it's hard to, again, like the retirements, it's a residual, I'm using your word, Stan, a residual income stream, because right now we're only getting approval for one librarian, and we are able to, I think it's either 1.6 or 1.8, I don't have it, again, this is a formula, so this trickles through the formula. If we had two librarians, we would get more money through the 279. But this also reduces the administrative side, which we always hear from our city side. So we're trying to streamline our administrative side on that. So that kind of works. And also, we've heard from Burns for many years, we never had a librarian. Now we'll have a librarian.
Is it fair? Is it fair to ask, and this is a broader question than just this item, that each year, your leadership team, yourself, and whoever else out there is involved, I can't imagine just that small number of people would be the total involvement here. But as they discover things, as they learn new ways to do things, then it's possible to have things like this come about that's different from the way we're doing it right now.
Correct. That's
yeah.
exactly what you're saying. Yep.
So there is that kind of evaluation going on, which makes us more efficient. And also, I'm assuming part of that is to make us better educators.
Correct. So there's lots of ideas out there on how to make us more efficient. I mean, remember the white paper, we were going to move into City Hall, and we go on and on and on. I've been here long enough now that, but the way we did these reductions, we did it in a consensus model. I mean, not all the leadership is happy with all this, but this we try to not touch kids as much as possible. I feel this is going to add to kids in a different way. It will help with our reading and the whole library piece of that. I think I'm answering your question.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. That's what I was hoping the answer was going to be, by the way.
We're always streamlining, looking at ways to do it. Sometimes some of the ideas are kind of far-fetched, especially if they come from the outside, where people don't understand the mandates that are on, for example, principals, what they have to do in a day, and those are huge. And again, I always ask everyone, if you want to go looking around in our schools, come follow a principal for a day.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for the superintendent? Seeing none, moving on.
And SMS is pretty much the same thing. After-school programs came, and MIMBEAN, which is a spelling vocabulary. I'm not really happy about that, but that's what the team came up with, so that's what it is. So $18,000. Any questions around?
What is the, I understand it says spelling and vocabulary license. What
It's
is that?
so it's a program that are, and I don't know, Ken's jumping to joy. Go ahead, Ken.
It's a subscription. It's a computerized subscription.
For spelling.
Okay.
Thank you. Any questions?
I do have one question that's
School Board
outside
Member
of what
Moss.
I'm looking at, but that touches on this with everybody. It's difficult to turn on the television, the radio, your pod, whatever you use to get information without first being hit with the latest information about the coronavirus. Schools are closing. Whole states of schools are closing. All kinds of things are being done. So my question is, what are we doing as far as that is concerned because we live in a community that has, in the middle of our community, a number of people who would possibly be exposed to this. And so this is not a dream-up question. This is something that we may have to be dealing with. So my question is, I assume we are, but you tell me the answer to that.
Great question, and then I'll get back to the budget. So tomorrow, the nurses and myself and other people are going on a webinar through the department. They're going to be doing a webinar on how to handle the outbreak and what's going on. The lucky thing for us, we have great school nurses that are on top of this. But we're also looking at, and I also on Friday, I have to go to Augusta for the superintendent's meeting with the commissioner, and we're talking about really what those purposes are. We do have policies in place, as we know, around all these type of things and what would happen, and what we're going to follow exactly what any other school would do. We're all going to stay together, just like how we call school snow day. You know, Old Orchard Beach and Biddeford, we all stay together. You don't separate from the pack or you'll get killed. So we'll probably do the same thing with this. So I'll have more information on that. I also met with our police chief this week. We talked about lockdowns, so we're looking at that option, pulling together a team on that, but it also looks at not only lockdowns, but other safety measures. So we're continuing to work together collaboratively.
So I just want to read this quickly. Read it at the City Council meeting, so I'll read it again here today. Please note that at this time, Maine has no confirmed cases associated with the 2019 novel coronavirus, COVID-19, and there is no one that we are aware of who is currently being tested or awaiting results in Maine. The U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention maintain that the immediate risk of contracting this novel virus remains low, and the greater risk for Mainers currently is seasonal influenza. The best preventative measures for all infectious diseases include washing hands thoroughly with soap and water, covering your mouth and nose when coughing and sneezing, and then washing your hands, and staying home when you feel sick prior to returning to work or school without the use of fever-reducing medication.
Thank you.
School Board Member Tardif.
On the same subject, I'm not saying we shouldn't look into it and be ready for it. However, closing schools and sending kids out, they're not going to stay home. There's too many kids in Saco that aren't going to stay home. So I don't see you solve a problem there. And I hope the superintendent brings that up when he goes to Augusta. The kids running around the street, whether they're in high school or grammar school, they're not going to stay home. They're home for 2-3 weeks. It's just not going to happen.
Will do. But we did, in my district where I live, and we did have a few cases, the flu, influenza, there was a 30% of the kids were out in my district, and we still went to school. So that was, so just keep that in mind. So, Stan? Sorry.
I'd just like to point out, to support what Ed Art is bringing up, the second case in New Hampshire occurred because the first case, an adult, didn't stay home.
Absolutely. Are we moving back to the
I'm ready to
budget?
go when you are. Okay. Special services. So this is, we've heard a lot about this, and again, around however we want to call it, the mistake or what happened at TA. I've talked in length with Rainey and Carol Taranko and my special ed department. So we came up with a couple different things to look at cost savings there. When I talked to the union today, the PASS program wasn't a very expensive program to put into place. However, it has a lot of great feedback, as you heard from your staff. There are a lot of new laws out around teacher safety, and we're seeing a lot of teachers not getting hurt because of the PASS program. Plus, we're trying to keep students in district. Another thing I really pounded on the commissioner around in our 279, which I've been doing this for a long time in special ed, districts don't get credit for keeping kids in district in programs like PATHS and our composite program. We don't get any credit through the special ed. It's just like, yep, you get through and you get a special ed. However, you send all the kids out of district, you get fully reimbursed. So that is something that the commissioner, because you heard it from not only me, but other superintendents that are looking at trying to build good programs and keep kids in the least restrictive environment. So that's kind of on a side. So I just wanted to let you know that. One of the things we're going to do, we had a 2-year contract with Maine State Billing. We are canceling that, again, because now my assistant, again, we all wear many hats out over here. A lot of my administrators, especially now that we're reducing them down, Celeste will now bill for Maine Care for OT, PT, and speech and language. That will save us $11,000 because they take that off the top. So as we get into revenue, we're not talking about that tonight, but next week that will be a big topic. Celeste is over there. She's doing a great job with 65 and soon to start on 28. I had Jess and Laurel look at all the IEPs to match up to make sure we didn't have any loose BHP or EdTech running around with not attached to a student or an IEP. We are pretty much in line with that. So we're pretty, and I even asked the union today, do you see any EdTechs floating around that don't work with kids? Let me know. So they're saying, no, we need more. So that's kind of where we are with that. So EdTechs, we did look at that. We wanted to make sure you knew that. Out-of-district professional development, so what we're really looking at next year, we didn't put this down as a savings. Again, you've met most of the staff that came in for, when they came in for PATHS, or our coaches or everyone else, we need to start using them as professional development for our PLC model. So there's no cost yet there, but we're hoping we're going to see that. Again, we just want to reiterate what some of the things we talked about today. So, board, we do reimburse some of our technical people, like our speech language people. We put down that $2,000. We're not going to be doing that. However, we can look at if they could come back and do some professional development over and beyond their time. So these are things that we looked at. So we did reduce that by $2,000. One of the things in our budget that we just, for next year, we're constantly looking, and it's really, in special ed, what happened is it's become a cottage industry for psychologists or psych examiners. A lot of contract services for doing our evaluations, helping us put programs in place for students. So we have contract in this district since I've been here. It's very expensive. You can get up to $120 per hour and now we are moving more to a salary position. So we found some savings in that because we'll be looking at, we just hired a psychologist for next year, and we're looking at another one, and based on the salary and where we're putting them on the teacher scale, we would save $50,000. The other part, which we've had since I got here, and we started looking at special ed, and Laurel helped me with a lot of this stuff. We started looking at the amount of contracts that we have for consultants. We have slashed all of those. and I'm going to tell you why. First, we slashed the educational consultant in the district. It was $18,000. They basically did assessments but helped with kids. An IEP coordinator at TA, we cut that for $23,000. TA coordination, we did get charged with that. You know, we talked about TA, why the increase came. They decided to charge us for 504. That was 70 to 80,000. I kind of put 72 in there. We have cut that out. I've talked to the headmaster, and he understands, and he will reduce that in next year's budget. We also decided to cut down some of the summer school for our most needy kids. Again, I'm not a fan of this, but the team came to it. It's $22,000. And this NCC program adjustment is that we needed to hire a program because we couldn't find special ed teachers, and it was a contracted, again, another contracted, and we hired teachers, and we saved that amount of money, about $16,000. So you're probably asking why, how are we going to do that? Cutting all that, because by contract, we have to be at all 140 IEPs at TA. We have 60, 504 students at TA from Saco. These are Saco residents, not any other residents. Yeah, and then we also have Sweetser, which we do have a contract with somebody, but we have to have that because, and we get reimbursed fully for that contract because they go to Sweetser. So what we have done, we've worked with our special ed department, that Laurel will be now the director of special services 9 through 12, and she will be monitoring all special ed services at the high school, including 504, as well as Sweetser, out-of-district placements, and so forth. Jess will come down. We'll have those two strategists, and we'll need to look at coverage. I'm probably going to pull some things off her and give it to myself. So that's where we are with special ed. We would save $219,000 and hit the issue. What we keep hearing about is that we have no oversight of TA. We will now.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes.
School Board Member Marsden, then School Board Member Scheinman.
Question about this whole list, okay?
Yep.
How come it wasn't there the first time through? I think I know what the answer is.
When we were going
I just
through,
wanted to have you give it to
these
me.
contracts have been in place before I came here, and actually, they were a lot heavier.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they were correct.
Yeah,
So-
that's part of it, but we've got a list here of $1 million worth of stuff, okay, that's being proposed as possibly to be removed from the budget that's been presented to us. And my question is, given the way in which this list is put together, why wasn't this developed before presenting the budget? Or as part of the budget?
Because every one of these are going to definitely have an impact on the system.
What's that?
Because
No, I don't want it on
I don't
an
think any of these
item-by-item
people really
basis.
want to put these cuts in. You can look over there. I mean, we'd rather keep them in. They'll shake their head. But it's going to impact. We try to stay away from kids and then go to staff and then and so forth. But you know, there's things in here that I don't agree with, and some of the people over there. But these are, you charged us to come in here to
Yeah.
reduce, so we did.
Okay.
School Board Member Scheinman.
Yeah, I think you have to consider that there are positives and negatives to these things, and that's why we're here, is to consider those things as a board. And they're not, it's not simple that you know, just cut. And you have to consider the consequences of it as opposed to the need for making cuts. I mean, you can always look back and say, well, the world could have been different, but it is what it is, and we're trying to do something now.
Well,
Thank you. School Board Member Marsden.
Go ahead. If I may comment on your, Steve, your comment. I appreciate very well, and one of the reasons I bring this up is that we need to have the people out there understand that this is a process. The process of putting together a budget exposes things that you didn't know before. And now you're able to do this because they became evident as you were doing the budget step one. So I go along with you, Steve. It's a very complicated process. And especially in education, there's an overlap between all of these topics. And so when you move one thing, you're impacting on a whole bunch of things. And it's our children's education that we have to be always looking for and always cautious about. And so it was not, I wasn't looking for that question as a trap for people, but as an opportunity for us to bring up to the community as a whole that this is not something that comes out of a cookie cutter that, you come up and you do it once a year. This is something that's a continuing process, and even as you're doing the budget, there are things that you find that you didn't know before. And that's an extremely important point for everybody to keep in mind. It's not that simple, and it shouldn't be. It's our children's education that we're dealing with.
Thank you. School Board Member Johnston.
Thank you. I think I have several questions around the special services. Maybe I can actually be articulate enough to ask correctly. One of the things that I'm never really fully understood is when we have contracted services, we pay a fee, but we don't pay benefits for that.
Correct.
So when you put it all together, what you're indicating here is that we have just hired a psychologist, and we're thinking or planning to hire a second one for
Yes.
next year.
It's already budgeted. It's in there. It's just budgeted at a higher rate.
Okay, it's budgeted at a higher rate.
Because we put a little bit more in there when we budgeted because we didn't know how to really look at that until we got through negotiations with the teacher's contract. They go on the teacher's contract if they're hired.
Okay.
But they're hired at a different rate. They're not hired it's not based on experience. So we kind of put higher levels in there.
So these individuals, once they are staff members rather than contracted services, it's still less expensive for us to have them on staff that way rather than to?
Yep.
Okay.
The first year, right? Because then they'll go through contracts and then they'll
We could have a contracted psychologist that could make what the psychologist for 5 days in 3 days or 2.5 days.
School Board Member Johnston, sorry
They
to
don't
jump
get
in.
benefits and they have tax implications and so forth.
Okay. So what I'm trying to find out is, we're sort of making an exchange there. We have had contracted services now being replaced by staff members. What I'm really looking for is, are we going to have more staff members next year than we have now? I mean, I'm trying to figure out if
Yeah,
we're...
they're going to be employees versus contracted.
Right, but there aren't more of them.
No.
Okay.
No.
So, all right, let me go on to the next question here. So, as I understand it, the IEP coordinator at Thornton Academy that we've in the past spent, I guess, $23,000+ on,
Yep.
is actually that service where that benefit is going to be performed by our own special services director?
Correct.
Laurel. Okay. Now, down on the next line, we're talking about, this is confusing to me, where we were billed this year for things that we had not been billed for in the past from Thornton Academy. Am I correct? And this line here,
The
TA
72,000.
coordination new charge, yes.
Yep.
So
So,
could you explain
yeah,
that
we,
again?
We talked about this quite a bit. One of the large increases that came in from TA was in the contract that whoever signed years ago, the 10-year contract, has 504 in there. So 504 is a broad disability law. It's like a sister-in-law to special ed. However, TA's never really charged us for that, but last year they said, we are going to charge you for this because we're having staff do these 504 meetings, and so we're going to charge you based on that person minus the other towns. So the other towns got charged for it. It's a big hubbub in the other towns. So what we decided to do is, when I talked to Rainey this week, I said, we will, and he's fine with this, he said, fine, if you're going to come in and do that, then we will not charge you that $72,000.
I'm sorry, if we are going to come in and do...
We are going to facilitate all meetings at TA. Every
Okay.
single 504, every single special ed meeting, period. So we have oversight of it.
Okay, so
And we won't
then-
get charged for it.
Okay.
So that's the savings.
All right, thank you. That
Yep.
is a great clarification and very interesting.
Hasn't been done before. We barely go up there.
Right.
You know, we have contracted with other people to do the required, facilitation, being there because we're fiscally we're responsible for whatever they make for money. So if they say we want an ed tech for that student, then we should have someone there, and we do. But this is just going to streamline it so we know who's going to be there.
I like this idea.
Thank you.
I am a little worried, though, are we going to be able to manage?
Well, we have 2 strategists in the district that will
Mm-hmm.
be at Burns, the 2 largest schools, that will help the principals and do things. K2, we talked about that today. They haven't had a strategist for a while, but I think that they can handle it. Jess would be working with all the other programs.
Okay, thank you. I guess this last one, I really probably didn't follow you very well on this NECC program adjustment.
So because we couldn't find a teacher, we've had several, I think last year we had 2 teachers that we could not find in special ed at all. So we had a BCBA who again, in the budget, that BCBA, Matt at Fairfield, was the teacher. So we didn't have a teacher there. We've really lucked out this year and hired some great people, as you saw. So that we had to do something at Burns, so we put in a program. We contracted with a program that had a teacher to come in. That program, we would save that amount of money while we hired a teacher, so which we're going to hire a teacher and save that amount of money because I think we're going to post that and we'll save that amount of money. Does that make sense?
I think I see what's happening, but my question is, again, would be, how is it that we're saving the money? That's what's not clear to me.
Because if you take the teacher that we hired and we get rid of the program costs and all the other things, we are going to save $16,000 because now they become an employee.
Okay.
Versus contracted.
Thank you. Thank you.
School Board Member Leary, then School Board Member Scheinman.
So I just want to ask a question. It was sort of related to an email Kevin Roach sent us. Do you and Renee meet and come up with a budget? Does he tell you what he thinks he's going to be billing Saco? Because I was a little confused by Kevin's email, but I kind of like the question of, like, can he just out of the blue start charging us for this 504, or should he have told us a year before so we could have budgeted it? And if he's supposed to tell us a year before, oh, by the way, I'm going to start billing City of Saco the 504s, we shouldn't be paying it this year. We should just say.
Well, it was for last year. And yes, he told me, midway through the year, we work really well with TA, but he did tell me that he was going to be charging us that this year. A lot of us argued with him, but again,
What if we just say, no, we're not paying it? Like, why are we saying halfway through the year you can change the rules? You've never done before. You need to have the conversation. We can tell the board of directors, sorry, no way.
Yep, we could certainly do that.
Why are we paying them? Why can't we just say no? Just a question, but.
If it's contracted, then you're going to have to pay it.
They've never, ever done that in the contract. Why would we think they're going to start, and why wouldn't we have the discussion before we agree to doing that, saying, okay, if that's the new game plan, that will take into effect next year, but not halfway through the year? It just doesn't make sense.
I don't disagree with the thought process of, moving the goalposts halfway through the year, so to speak. However, if it's in a contract, it's a contract, and you have to go forward with a contract. Now, you could challenge the contract, and that's a whole.
Well, and that doesn't fare well for other districts, because
That's right.
they challenged that contract and they lost.
There's another thought. The fact that they didn't charge it in previous years doesn't mean that they can't charge it this year.
But, you know, there are other ways
If
that
it's in the contract.
And again,
It's-
we're in constant communication. We have good relationships with them. Jason's constantly talking to their person. I talked to that person. She felt terrible that she put the wrong number down. And long story short, this is way back. I get it, but we're going to try to work forward with that. I mean, I don't.
The other important thing here is the reason why we're putting somebody there is just to have more oversight of the situation. And that, I think that's a critical part of what we're doing, is to try to avoid situations like that.
I understand that, but they need to own their own errors also. And I don't feel that they are at all. And just because, oh yeah, this poor woman made a mistake, oh well, you eat it, I'm not okay with that.
Okay.
And I think we should have challenged that a little bit more.
We certainly can now.
School Board Member Scheinman, anything?
No, I did have a general comment that I believe that the examination that is being made to make these services more efficient is particularly beneficial, because it is something that benefits over a period of years, and it is substantial in the amount of money. So we're talking about substantial savings in this area, the most expensive area we have to deal with, and the most difficult to deal with. So I appreciate the effort to make, and I appreciate ongoing thinking on this as to how to make our services very good and very efficient as well.
School Board Member Tardif.
Well, I think you have to remember also that Thornton made the mistake, and they're handling it the way they want to. However, the state says they can charge a minimum and a maximum, and they've always charged us the minimum. What happens if they go to the maximum? We're saving $1 million now because they go minimum. I wouldn't want to get into a tussle with them on that end of it. That's per student.
And there's, when we shore up on students that at the end of the year, because we have to do that, we do the April child count, and we try to fix a lot of those errors, and maybe this year we can talk about that. So I don't know, just to go back to your question.
Any further questions for the superintendent
Around the reductions.
around the reductions? I just have a question, Tom.
Yep.
I brought up something at the last meeting where I think we could see some realized savings due to the schools being owned by the city in the OPM. Why not collaborate with the city facilities director in putting all of facilities direction under one roof, rather than have two facilities directors budgets, and the administration seems to go on and on and on, rather than consolidate under one roof, whereas the city owns the buildings and has to look out long-term for those buildings, which is why we've partnered that bigger group of long-term planning for schools. So I don't know if that was entertained or looked at or what have you, but I think there's a realized savings.
And I'll let the other, I think that would be great, but I am not going to put that in there until we have a full discussion, sit down with city council to talk about that. I think the biggest concern for me would be how the schools are getting prioritized. So, there's making sure that if we do that, how do we ensure that the schools are going to have what they need? Because we're reducing it all the time. I'm not saying we can't do it, but I think that was my concern and some of the board members, and I'll let you guys speak as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that the infrastructure committee should look at as well, the super one, and we're willing to look at it, but I think that's a major, it has to be planned out a little bit. I don't want to put it in there without a plan, because that doesn't make sense.
And we have discussed that in the office, that at least some of us, and including myself, would like to see a proposal from the city to make that work, because it sounds simple on the face of it, but we have to cover some things that we make sure that things are done And we have to think about it. I mean, it's not something that we can just toss off, in my view. But I am, personally, I'm open to it, but I would like some kind of proposal from the city as to how this would work.
Or a collaborative proposal working
Or
together.
collaborative, or something we do jointly, yeah.
I think we're up for it, but we just got to make sure that we have everything crossed. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
But I'm not opposed to the idea.
School Board Member Tardif.
I have no problem with what you're saying to do it, but I don't know if you're really going to be saving money, because you're going to pick up quite a crew to go along with what you got to keep up with all these schools.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got over $2 million now that needs to be done, and we can't do it. Now, if you want to pick it all up and take care of it, I'm all for it. I really am.
In speaking with the folks on the city side, we do believe that we can get a realized savings of approximately $400,000.
Then let's discuss it and get at it.
Well, we did cancel the last infrastructure committee, so now maybe we should start that up again, the super one. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay, so we can put that possibly down as a savings, but we need to.
School Board Member Marsden.
When you start touching on a subject like this, you have to be careful to be sure you take it into account the kind of organization you're dealing with. An education organization is not a filling station, a garage, or any other list item you want to put on the list. So when you start messing around with the organization, you've got to be talking about and looking very carefully at the impact of the organization that can destroy the very thing that you've got the organization for if you're not properly taking those things into account.
And I think we are looking at it. I think we already have, as Mr. Garrity explained earlier, we already have some areas where we're being collaborative. But I think there's a bigger collaboration that can be done and save money if you put all of facilities under one roof for the entire city. I mean, that's all that we're talking about. It's just like the talks about consolidation into City Hall, and those broke down. It's trying to move past the barriers that are really hindering us from taking that next step forward and saying we are one city and we are moving forward in a direction that is in the best interest of the community, because we have aging schools. That's no secret. We're on a list. We're number 4. We have some aging schools, and as the infrastructure committee, that you brought forward a 5-year plan, right, that has several areas of concern for the schools. If that was on the city side, we could build that into the capital plan as part of ongoing repairs and under the facilities director, which is under the Public Works Department, which oversees the capital plan. It's just food for thought, but it's really a conversation where I think there can be some realized savings if we work together. School Board Member Johnston, you had a question.
Really, I was just going to weigh in with most of the rest of us here, saying that I think it's definitely a conversation that we should have. I'm not sure. I mean, I think our budget here tonight obviously is a little bit outside of the topic, but I do think that it's something that we should talk about. It might take several conversations, but I would like to think that if something along those lines were to happen, that the city fathers would own even more their, sort of a sense of pride and responsibility towards the maintenance of our schools. Thank you.
School Board Member Marsden.
In response to what you stated, I agree with the thrust of what you were getting at, what you're saying, or I believe in it, if I've understood what you said. However, I come back to what I said, which can't be overlooked. That's one of the reasons why I made the comments that I did about this list. Because this is an evolutionary process. It is something that happens as developments occur that makes it possible for things to be done that couldn't be done before. It occurs when you build a new school. That's one of the reasons why for 10 years now, I've been talking about a new school in Saco and the significance of that school. That's how some of the things that you're looking for comes about. You get a facility that makes it possible to do some of these things. That's why it has to be a top priority. But we also have to live within what we got right now. And so some of the things that we would like to do were hampered by the very structure we find ourselves within that was built, in many cases, 100 years ago, which was great at that time, but is not great in 2020. And so unless you have to take those kinds of things into account, and some of the arguments that I've heard in this community for the 25 years that I've been here and involved in education and everything is that people are evaluating the organization on the basis of a business structure. This is not a business. This is an educational organization. That's the way to be judging it. That's the way to be looking for changes that you can bring about.
School Board Member Scheinman.
I'd like to, in regard to this, one thing that we can do is check on any legal implications. I do know that there is some language that says that the schools are responsible for maintenance. That doesn't mean maybe that they can't delegate it out to the city, but the school, I believe their language in the state things that the schools have a specific maintenance responsibility.
So I think what
it needs to be checked.
So I think with the retirement piece that we talked about, I can take that back and look at that piece. And also with any good mediation, Mr. Mayor, I think we could come up with some good solutions. It might not be what you just said, but I think we could look at some things and look at cost savings. So we'll look at maybe getting the infrastructure committee together sooner than later.
Thank you. I'm just looking out for the taxpayer. Right, I mean, you're looking at an 11% increase here if you approve the reductions, and if not, it's 15%. And then the city is looking at.
Hold on, I think we got to go over those numbers a little bit.
That's not correct.
Is that no 11?
So what I think I want to do, because there's a lot of numbers thrown around that are not necessarily true. Again, I mean, we got to go to the source.
Sure.
I'm just going to go over numbers. These are factual. We did give the 5-year. Steve talked about the 5-year. How we basically did our budgets over the last 5 years. I heard that those are not true. Those are true. They come from the audit. Anybody want to come in, feel free to come in. The school board approved budget last year was $41,583,000. This is a little, I think you have that there.
Mm-hmm.
The city budget, the city approved budget was $40,463,000, where the city told us to reduce 1.1 million. And I think it's a lot of confusion around there. In retrospect, I wish now I would have cut everything 1.1 million. But what was told to us was to don't, spend down your surplus, which we thought was going to be about 1.3, 1.6. Am I right? And I think I just want to follow where we are. So what the board decided to do was put back the city council reduction because it really wasn't, we really went back to the $41,563,000. Our budget that we put over include no RADs, no nothing. That is just pulling everything over, and it was a $3,252,000 increase. So, which is a 7.82%. If you want to add back in the 1.1, yes, I think people have used that to say, look how large it is. Our new budget adjustment is a 2.52, so really, our proposed budget is $43,768,776, which is a 5.31% increase, not including the 1.1, that's separate. That was not, and again, I'm speaking for the board, and you guys can talk about it, but in our average for 5 years since I've been here is a 5% increase. So you can maneuver the numbers however you want to look at on Facebook, but that is exactly what those numbers are. And we'd be happy to talk, and again, we have other areas that we don't know. We still don't know what the health insurance is. We don't know what Governor Mills is going to give us. We don't know other types of things. And really, what we really need to know to really look at the tax levy is the information we need from you April 1st. You know, we don't have, the tax increase does not equate to what the mill rate increase will be to taxpayers, as we can't predict that. The city, you will tell us that. So we're just looking at expenditures. Next week, we'll talk about revenues and recommendations around that. So I just want to make sure that those numbers can be mixed up and pulled around, but those are the numbers that we're working from.
And I wasn't going by the Facebook numbers. I was going by these that have been presented to us at every meeting. And so I know that this says total tax levy increase for 20 to 21, 11.18%.
But we can't figure that out yet because we don't have the information from you. So and last year, I think it was, I can't remember what it was, but there was no tax levy increase from our side, remember?
Right.
At 41 million.
But that's because there was a perceived surplus, and there was a
surplus.
Reduction
right.
By the council of 1.1 million, but there actually ended up not being a surplus.
Right,
and
now
there
we're
was
right, but that's separate. But I mean, I think where we start the number is really the question that we need to talk about.
Yeah, I think you have to come back to the fact that the city council reduced by 1.1 million. We didn't. We spent pretty much as usual. And the reason for that is because they had intended us, what we were very much told is, don't reduce it, just use up your deficit.
Invite them to the table.
I mean, use up your surplus. That's not good thinking, but that's what happened. And so we're still, that 1.1 million, some has to come from somewhere because it's still there. There's no way to run from that.
I definitely understand that there's a deficit from the 1.1 million that was reduced, but actually wasn't reduced. It was gone on perceived surplus that wasn't actually there. I understand that. I totally get that. My question is, what are we looking at for this coming year?
Right.
And that's what I was going on these numbers for, which is an estimate. I understand that as well,
Right.
that it's an estimate. But when you're looking at these type of numbers, and the community's looking at these type of numbers, and I know the city side, just with contractual increases on its side, without any service enhancements, RADs, whatever you want to call them, is looking at an approximate of perhaps 5% increase as well. So it's
semantics of language, really. Our budget went forward this year with the reduction. It's a 5.31% increase. If you add the 1.1 million, yes, it's going to go up. But that was our budget. Again, the city council, we have it on tape. Don't reduce any positions. Again, in retrospect, I know talking with Lynn, we should have reduced the budget completely.
Yep.
But no one told,
yes.
the board didn't say that, you didn't say it. So I think there needs to be clarity, because there's a lot of people out in the community saying that happened, and that's not how it happened.
And I will also add that if we had reduced it by $1.1 million, there would have been a lot of pain in that. And it would not have been, that was an amount of money that came up without consultation with us in any way. It happened at 11:30 at night. It happened at the very end of the process. There was no way for us to react really properly to that. It's on both sides, the problem. It's not just the council. It's our side too, but it's what happened. In any event, that money, that 1.1 million we need. It's still there. It's still there. In the very fact that we came into the year proposing to the council no increase at all, no increase. And with that drop, it was a negative. It's a negative figure. When you have increases going on every year, as they do, the increases are going on, and there is no increase, something's going to gang up on you in the next year. And that's what's happened here. It's ganged up on us. So that's why we're looking for these cuts. We're looking for efficiencies to get that down. And we understand there's a problem here.
Thank you.
And I'm sure this will be talked about at the next level anyway, so
I'm sure.
we'll continue on with that. So again, I'm advocating for our teachers and our staff. With these reductions, we're not losing anybody. It's shifting things around. I feel comfortable with this. I'm going to leave. We have a couple other areas which we talked about, and early retirements that we can look at. And that's why I need direction from the board. We meet next week with leadership team and the MEA. So I will leave it for you guys. Where do you want me to go with this? How do you want to do it?
School Board Member Scheinman.
And as painful as it is, I'm also asking, not that I want these things, but we've got to look for all ways of reduction, including things, efficiencies that may involve salaries too. I'm sorry to do that, but you have to look in, that doesn't mean we're going to do it, but we have to be prepared for any level of occurrences here because of the fact that this is a problem right now. So, I mean, I'm not trying to hide from the problem. What I'm trying to do is to do it without this, but we have to see, without any changes in anybody's that affects salaries. But I think that there's a responsibility. That's if the other board members feel that way. I think we should look into that too.
But I don't think you can reduce contracted salaries in contracts, so, okay.
No, but the positions can be changed.
Fair enough. School Board Member Leary. School Board Member Marsden.
I've been quiet for a couple of minutes. What I want to say is that if you or anybody else on the council or the council as a whole has any ideas that you think we should be considering them, don't tell me I've got a secret. That's worse than not bringing it up. Bring it up. The only way it can be discussed and considered is if we know about it and it's out in the open so that we can all be dealing with it. So if you guys have some ideas, I expect to be seeing them within the next few days. Because based on what you said, you do have some ideas. Don't keep a secret.
I don't think that I have. I think I've proposed it multiple times. So, but thank you for that. And if the councilors have any suggestions, they'll be brought up at the next joint meeting between the two parties.
Stan, this has been brought up, but we can't put a dollar figure because we really don't know what it's going to be. So in order to bring it back to you guys, we need to kind of work together.
Yeah.
So to defend the mayor, he has brought this up.
So I'm going to bring a couple things up. First, I agree with Steve. It's not an easy decision, but we do have to look at, are there any positions that we can eliminate with the least effect on the students? So that's one area. The second thing, this is another Kevin Roach email, and I would love, Kevin asked to see the most current information, and tell me if I'm wrong, Kevin, on what we spend per student in our district compared to the other districts locally, and we haven't seen that information. Oh, did I miss it?
We saw it a couple of years ago, but it hasn't been updated.
We haven't seen it.
Yeah, we're pulling that together now. But right, that's a great point because it brings out another point. We were, I think, 16 or 17 out of 20 in Cumberland, York County.
See where we are now.
Yep.
And then the other area that I want to ask, I ask this every year on this pre-K, can we go to more half-day classrooms because we can double the amount of students with half the teaching staff, and we can affect the budget that way. So is that something we can look at again?
You done with that one?
I'm done with that one.
Yes, we're working on the per pupil rate. I just, it's calling and getting more information from all of the other supers who are doing the same thing. We'll look at positions, if that's what the charge is from the district. But for pre-K, we really can't do, that's not, it sounds great on paper, but we don't, first, right now, our PM, help me when I'm wrong, is not even full, because that's not what parents want. And really, that's not really what we get for kids, what we really want. We want them all day. Is there anything else you want? No? So we're missing 10 slots when we do half-day.
Don't offer the full day. I beg to differ that maybe those half days will fill up.
I hear you, but I completely disagree.
I'm okay with that.
School Board Member Tardif, and then we'll come back to you, Stan, but I want to make sure everyone gets in per the Roberts Rule.
I just
Nothing,
want
okay,
to
Stan.
add on to Lynn's list and say, if you could do some of that by comparing us with the communities around us, so that, are we way higher, way lower, doing well, not so well?
If you look at the community, again, if we want to look at the one that I passed out 2 years ago, we are, everyone complains about TA, but they are a very good, it actually makes our per pupil rate lower if you compare it out. So it was, I think, 12,300 or whatever it was. It has jumped up again, but we're lower. And the other thing you want to say, we are really great. I mean, we hear things that we're not good with money. However, we've been very good with and efficient. Even the MEA said that today for the last 5 years. God, I feel like I'm sounding on the Democratic stage here. For the last 5 years. And the other part is our academic scores go up. We're doing something right. We have great staff. We have great coaches and interventionists. So, I know you guys want to cut staff. I'm not in favor of that. We'll look for efficiencies, but I think we have looked at every efficiency.
School Board Member Johnston. Did you have your hand up? Okay.
One of the reasons I'm asking for that is because
Come to you.
there's a million rumors out there on the street, okay? And what I like is some factual information that we're able to refer to and say, no, it's not 25%, it's this, okay? And we've got factual information to back us up. Now, if they don't like the answer, well, they've got to figure out how to deal with it.
It's just two things.
School Board Member Scheinman.
There are two things. One is I do support the notion, because I did look into, I've had some experience with budgets. I've been doing it for many, many years. And working with people who work financially in the office and et cetera. In my view, and here's some negative stuff around, but in my view, they do a pretty good job managing budgets here. Because if you look in the past 5 years, from 2015 through 2019, specifically the last audited years we have, on balance for those years, we took in far more revenue than was in the budgets, and we spent less. It was not even in those years. There was a wide divergence in years, but overall in that period, we did better than in handling the budget than even, and on both sides, on both the revenue and the expense side, and both are important. On the other hand, I don't advocate cuts in making more efficiencies that would advocate, in effect, cuts in people. I don't advocate it. One of the reasons for looking into this kind of thing is the opposite reason, is to see why these things are essential. That you do it because we're running a lean and mean ship. You're doing things properly. It doesn't mean that I advocate and want those cuts, but I just like to be able to say to people, we've got to have what we have. And I don't think that's a negative thing against anybody. It's part of good management, in my view. Yeah.
School Board Member Johnston.
So one of the things that I wanted to sort of make sure I can clarify is around not so much cutting not so much cutting staff, but, forget it. I'll get a new pair eventually. Not so much of the question of cutting staff or not, but I mean, my concern is that we've done a lot in the last few years. We've had several new programs. And my concern is just that we hold it level at this point in time, so that we're not taking on more maybe than we can even chew, taking on more expenses and taking on more staff. So I guess my question is, just to clarify, that we are not doing any new programs this year. Is that correct, Mr. Superintendent?
Correct.
Okay. I just want to clarify that, because I think we don't need to do any more right now. We need to maintain as
If we were
much as
doing new
possible.
programs, it would be a RAD.
Right.
Service enhancement.
Sounds just so.
But just to clarify, because sometimes, things are not as clear as they should be.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
No new programs.
Thank you.
School Board Member Leary.
Two things. First, I want, sort of piggybacking on Beth's question or clarification, I want to be positive, and I want to hear from you guys that everything that we did add in the last 2 years has been as beneficial as we had hoped it to be, because I'm not convinced we've heard that part of it. We've heard some of it, but are all those things we added truly necessary? And the second part of my question would be, I know you've talked to the leadership team, but have you actually got input from the teachers? That's actually the ones that are, I think if we ask the teachers, they might even come up with some ideas that no one else has had. They're the ones working there, they're in the classroom, and they might be able to come up with some more efficiencies also.
So I didn't talk to all the teachers, but the union representatives, I met with them tonight. And when I reviewed the reductions, they agreed with all of them, and also understood, and a lot of them have been here when we have done a lot of attrition, when we cut back, during those lean budgets, when people left, we didn't hire them back, made higher caseloads, and things like that. I think they felt comfortable with this. They're obviously looking out for their staff and all of the different unions, because all 3 unions were represented. So
I'm not even sure if I can say this, but I'm going to anyways, and you can kick me if I'm not. So have we considered saying to the unions, look, would you be willing to look at different health insurance policies, just an instance, different health insurance policies that might cost less to both the employee and to the district, yet let the employees take the risk. So your younger ones might be willing to do a different type of policy that would save money across the board to everybody. I believe when I've brought this up before, I was told flat out no. And so one way to look at it is to say, instead of cutting positions, we don't want to do that. But would you be willing to cut or look at other possibilities where there can be money savings? And I find we get a big flat no. And so that's why I'm saying then we're going to have to do the difficult job of, let's say, okay, maybe we do have to cut positions. I don't want to, but we need to be able to look at different areas, and they need to be open to new ideas. Sorry, you took it away from me. Nice.
No. So, yes, I did bring that up. Not about health insurance. That is not the area, but I asked them to, as you know, we just renegotiated the contract. So it's solidly set in stone, but I did ask them if they could look at different venues of not losing money, but shifting like a percentage to go next year and the year before. They're going to take it back. The admin team, I asked them too, as we have a semi-contract, and they said if the teachers do it, they would do something, possibly. So there's possibilities there, but there's nothing in stone. So yes, I did look at that.
School Board Member Marsden.
Some organizations go along with what Lynn is bringing up. Automatically go out every 3 years, 4 years, and see what else is out there. That's part of their plan, part of their business plan, so that the issue that Lynn is bringing up is attended to as a result of being planned to start off with. We can say, well, we looked at this 2 years ago, but we found this. But if we don't look at it, then that's how you miss things.
Yeah, so Stan, we did do that. We did find a different dental program, and we were going to save $75,000 to $80,000, but the union has to sign off on it. It's in the contract. They refused to.
Yeah.
Not refused to. They looked into it. I'm not going to say that. So they did go back. A few members were very vocal, and they, because of the coverage of, I don't know, something to do with replacement of teeth or something, they didn't want to do it. So there was issues with that, but we could have saved $75,000 there. Blue Cross Blue Shield is a really big issue in the contract. I don't think they'll ever touch that. But both parties have to agree to go out to like a Harvard Pilgrim or wherever. Does that help with your?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further questions? Seeing no further questions, Superintendent.
So where do you want me to go? You gave me 3 things to do, so I'm going to reiterate. So I'm going to go back and look at a possible retirement plan option.
I have no problem with that.
Yes.
At least we'll have an idea.
Okay. I got that one. I'll look in, so Jen and I will look at that. I will bring back the per pupil rate, and I'm going to try to get, if some of them have got their budgets done this year, I can try to do that, but it might be a little hard, but I'll definitely do next year. And then the positions, is there any clarity where you want me to go with that? You said look at positions. I mean, you say that to me every year. I don't.
Really, no clarity. I just want to make sure that we're running efficiently.
Okay, so you want me to go back to leadership to here and look at efficient ways?
Yeah.
Sure.
I think what my thinking is that if we have to be the ones responsible, in my view, for cuts. I don't want the council responsible for that. And if the council makes cuts and then comes back and say, just cut this much, that's backwards, because then we're going to have to do some things that are very painful that aren't good. But one of the reasons we could say to the council that to go further beyond the things that the board adopted will be detrimental to education. And we've looked into these things. That's why I say to look into these things. It's bad because it will do this, this, and this. It will eliminate, I'm going to put an extreme case, eliminating a 3rd grade teacher, eliminate a 2nd grade teacher. That's obviously unacceptable. So, and other things that we have to have, eliminate principals. Well, I mean, it's easy to say these things, but we have to be prepared to say we can't do it because we've thought it through. We can't.
School Board Member Leary, any clarity for the superintendent?
You don't want my clarity right now. No.
School Board Member Tardif?
Okay, thanks.
School Board Member Marsden?
That's exactly what I was getting at when I got up on my podium here a short while ago, what Steve is bringing up. And that is that what, as he has brought up and as I brought up, that's a responsibility that really has to come to us. We're the ones that are closest to the fire.
Yeah, I agree.
We're the ones that have available the information needed. And blind shots in the dark are not helpful in that kind of a situation. That's why it's got to be us that aren't doing it in the dark, or hopefully not.
School Board Member Tardif, do you have anything?
Awesome.
Superintendent, did you have something? School Board Member Johnston?
No, for now.
Did you have something?
I look forward to sitting down with City Council like it was intended to do and go around the table in a collaborative manner to talk about how we can solve the problems together versus sitting at the pulpit and beating us down. So that's the real, hopefully, where we can really solve problems. But if we continue to rip each other apart, the teachers are watching tonight. All of them are on Facebook. They watch. They don't say anything because they are fearful of things, retribution. But anyway, I think the closer we can work together like what you're talking about, it just makes this Saco a better place, so.
Thank you.
I guess I do
School
have
Board
one
Member
last-
Johnston.
Just one last comment. I think that to me, it's important for us to realize that the quote cut from last year was theoretically as a result of the fact that we had a perceived surplus, as you pointed out, Mr. Mayor. So I think we're in a different situation this year, and I agree with, I think, everyone else here at the table that whatever we can do to make this budget work, it is our responsibility to do so. And I think we're trying, and we'll have another round next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? If not, do you have some direction? Do you have enough direction to go back and
feel like you have enough direction? I get thumbs up.
okay, then I guess we will move on to adjourning the workshop, and then I think we're all done. Is there a motion to adjourn the workshop?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All hand vote, all in favor? It is unanimous. The workshop is adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Oh, no.
Are you going to be able to go to the city clerk and get on the table the replacement for him?
It's already been done.
It's already been done?
I got you.
She's the only one that can do it.
What's that?
She's the only one that can do
I
it.
know that.
And the mayor's already talked to her.
That's our responsibility.
Huh?
That's our responsibility.
No, it's not. That's
Yes, it
what
is.
the rules tell you what to do. The mayor told her to put it on. Call.